what then should they do? And the more important question, I think, is how should the decision be made? Who gets to make the decision? Is it the Ricktatorship? Is it consensus of the whole group? Is it something in between? And why does Rick get to be in charge anyway?
Yeah.
And why does Shane have to follow Rick's lead?
Mm-hmm. They never had a vote, really. Why does
Rick get to make this decision?
Yeah.
You know, who says? We just fall into this assumption of that's how it's going to be organized. And by we, I mean the group. I don't mean us.
We kind of do too, maybe a lot of us anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's something that's really worth questioning. And for those of you who are all prepping for the apocalypse, as I, of course, always am, the most useful thing to think about is, who are your neighbors? How well do you know your neighbors? How well do you get along with your neighbors? Because where I live, there's the possibility of a very big earthquake happening, which could cut us off and isolate us from help from anywhere for a long time. So the few people who live right on my street are going to be the people I have contact with after that apocalypse. And, you know, am I going to be Rick? Yes.
I would be in that colony like a shot.
And I would be very happy to have you.
Amazing.
So I don't have an answer to what the right thing to do is, and I love any piece of fiction that can present me with a question that I don't immediately have a right answer that I can, cite the justifications for. And that's what The Last of Us did as well, which is why I love The Last of Us so much.
For sure. Yeah, Walking Dead does that a lot. And have you played the Telltale game at all?
I have.
There's a lot of that where you have to make the decision and you have like 3 seconds to decide whether to like chop your leg off or kill some guy or something. I don't know.
That's right. And I actually played season 1 twice. The first time I played it for real, making the decisions I think I would really make. And then the second time I decided I was going to go down the path of darkness and make the worst possible decision in every case.
That's what's fun about the games.
Exactly.
The slight tangent, just because I know Rennie's interest, the Telltale Game of Thrones game was amazing.
Yeah, pretty good.
I have not played that one.
Oh, Rennie,
the only bad thing is it's a cliffhanger, and they never finished
I was going to
it,
say, there's a decision you have to make that I was like, lost my mind over. I was like, no, and then it was a cliffhanger, and I was like, ugh. But it's very good. But yeah, it is. I mean, it's the Randall of it all is. I was thinking about how Randall behaves in this episode, and if we get any clues as to whether they're right or wrong, because we know that he shows his ass with Shane in a later episode where he's like, "Oh, I love the guys; they're all really cool," or whatever. I mean, that's very badly phrased. I'm sure in 2 episodes when we cover it, I'll be like, "That is not what happened."
But we're watching him to see what kind of a person he is. Every little tell.
Well, I think we can trust Daryl's judgment of him. Not that he got the information in a good way, but Daryl has been around enough people who run with gangs and are
that's next week,
marauders, right? to know one when he sees one.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned Daryl, because one of the things that really interested me was the glee on Randall's face when he manages to get his arms in front of his body in order to attack the female walker that's coming for him, and he says something like, "Come on, bitch," or something like that.
Yeah, I think he says, "Show me what you got, bitch," and he says it in a really hateful way. And at that moment, I'm rooting for the walker.
Yeah,
100%.
And I'm saying, let's just kill Randall.
But then I think in episode 2 or 3, we see Daryl shoot a walker in the face and call it an ugly skank, and I think what he does is not as bad as what Randall does here, because Randall is like going for it with the knife. But it interests me, and I'll forgive it with Daryl because it's right at the start when they're still figuring out who these characters are. But it interested me because my instinct was the same as you, Rennie. It was like, oh god, no, kill him, he's awful. And then I was like, Daryl did call that woman an ugly skank and then stab her in the face.
And also, like, just to play devil's advocate, because clearly that moment was like, oh, you're you hate women, you know, and you get off on hurting women. That's the vibe that but then you're like, okay, yes, devil's advocate, it's a monster. It's not a human being. And sometimes people use that word just for anything, you know? And so I think, like, Rennie, what you're saying, this is an interesting development because there's a lot of debate, and so I can take the other side of that debate and see it for like, okay, this doesn't necessarily mean he's a bad person, but it sure did give me that vibe.
But of course, neither Rick nor Shane saw him do that.
Yeah,
No.
Right. Only the audience saw that, so it can't factor into their
decision. But for us, even for us, because I'm still at this point watching the show when I haven't seen later episodes, trying to decide for myself whether I think he's a good or a bad person. And at this point, I still wasn't sure.
The way that Rick screams "shut up" specifically to Randall many times is, I want it to be my ringtone. He's just so he's so fucked off with Randall all the time. He's like, "Shut up!" And Randall's like, "Okay, sorry, man." Like, he's such a pain in the ass.
I think me and Karen made fun because there's this old show, Gomer Pyle, where we always talk like this, you know. Don't kill me.
I think Rick shouting "shut up" would be the awesomest ringtone ever, because do you really want your phone to ring? No. So it's like the phone's telling itself to shut up.
Shut up or I will shoot you. I'm like,
yeah, Lucy's in a restaurant and all of a sudden the phone goes, "Shut up or I will shoot you." And
it's my mother, don't worry.
Yeah, hi Mom.
all those kind, gentle UK people look at Lucy and go, "I'm not sure you're one of us."
They're just like, "I'm sorry, where have you come from?" And I'm like, "Oh, you know, Scotland." But I also cracked up at the end because I was like, "Oh, Randall's driving, that's cool." And then I realized Rick had taped his neck to the seat. For some reason, that just sent me. I was like, that is so ridiculous. So Randall had to sit there while Rick duct taped him to the seat of a car. It really made me laugh. And the other bit that I think was unintentionally quite funny is when Randall's bleating all this stuff about, I was a normal guy, blah, blah, and he's like, I went to school with Maggie. And then Rick and Shane turn around, these like two ridiculously aggressive macho men, both just screaming repeatedly, "You went to school with Maggie? Did you go to school with Maggie?" And I'm like, wow, they're really, whoa, I've got a headache just listening to this. Yeah, it really made me laugh. And is Randall telling the truth that he went to school with Maggie?
Well, he's an
So,
idiot if he's not telling the truth, because that was his death warrant.
Yeah.
And
he
he's
shouldn't have said it if it's not true. I mean, you shouldn't have
Yeah.
said it even if it is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right. But again, devil's advocate, he's kind of in a horrible situation, probably not thinking too straight, like,
True.
Yeah. Because there is some debate in the next couple of episodes, isn't there, about whether or not he's telling the truth, because Maggie can't remember him.
Yeah, but he said she never knew me.
I love the feeling that he like had a crush on her or something. Because he's like, she never saw me, and I'm like, oh, well.
Or he could just be lying. Yeah, you never know.
You live in her barn now, so
if they care about whether he went to school with Maggie, they could ask questions about the school and stuff and find out.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting, the whole situation, because of what it says about Rick and Shane. It's about whether you should take care of the people you don't know at the expense of risking the safety of the people you do know, and to what degree. It's about whether you should have compassion, and Rick says yes, and Shane says only if it doesn't cost or risk anything. Or maybe he would just say no, I don't know. So watching this the first time, and even now I was studying Randall to see what kind of a person he is, trying to judge whether he deserves compassion. But it occurred to me today that Rick actually, I guess it would matter to him if Randall was just a total monster, but he is sort of assuming that Randall's a bad guy. He's not like, oh, I wonder if he could be a part of our group. He's like, no, we have to get rid of him somehow. Like you said, the three choices, for Rick, it seems to be two choices: take him away and leave him somewhere, or kill him. And otherwise, he could just keep him around and make him part of the group. And years later, he chooses to lock up Negan rather than kill him.
Yes.
But not practical here, like we were saying, necessarily. I think it makes a difference whether he's a decent person caught up with bad people or he's just a violent, aggressive person himself. And I remember when I interviewed Angela Kang the first time, I asked her about that and she told me, but I'm going to save that for next week because I might play some clips from it. But for now, up to this point, evidence for being a good person, or at least not deserving of being killed. He says, why would you save my life just to kill me by leaving here? I'm just one guy. I can't make it alone. That's why I was with those guys. I was alone. I'm not like them. I used to watch football and screw around on the internet. I live with my mom. I lost her like you lost people. I went to school with Maggie. Like all that stuff could absolutely be true, especially with a guy as young as him, that he just was like, okay, I'm either going to be on my own and die, or I have to try to make it work with these assholes until I can find another situation, Yeah. And another thing that is a good point is this is a man's life and Rick wants to take a night to think about it.
I like that line a lot when he said, it can't be as easy.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important point, that it shouldn't be an easy decision to make.
And it does become very easy for him later, to the point where he's shooting at random people that he doesn't have any idea who they are.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that I like about the early seasons of the show better, is that one man's life does make a difference. Yeah. And in later seasons, I can see them either leaving Randall stuck on the fence for the zombies to eat, or shooting him so that he doesn't get eaten by zombies.
Yeah, they left Orange Backpack Guy. Yeah, totally. Exactly. But I love that, because I think it's Rick's character progression, which he then, I believe, comes back from that place of darkness. But anyway, evidence for being bad is what Shane says for Randall being bad, is that he shot at Rick and ran with men who tried to kill them. The thing with the Zed where he's got a big smile on his face, come on, bitch, let's see what you got. When Shane is stuck on the bus, Randall suggests leaving him, but then Rick kind of says that's a good idea. He does intend to leave him, I think, but it's still a point against Randall, I would say.
Randall's a bit of a devil on the shoulder, at that point. Well, and he's like, we could just leave.
The ambiguous evidence is what the information that Daryl kicks out of him about what the gang he was with did when they had evidently found another group of people and killed all the men, and worse than killed the women. And then Randall keeps saying, I didn't do any of that. I didn't hurt any of the women. Well, is he telling the truth there, or did he belatedly realize that when he owned up to the fact that the group he was with did that he better disclaim having done any of it himself? And I don't think there's any way to know whether he's telling the truth about that or not.
Right. Unless you ask Angela Kang.
Okay. From the evidence presented in the show, I don't think there's a way to know whether.
But it's suspicious, though. I think he's super suspicious. And one more thing, I think it's worth noting that later on, Rick and crew end up trusting people and allying with people that I think are much sketchier than Randall, like the Saviors after All Out War. It's a different situation, but they try to integrate, right? And and I think, even though it's such a bad situation to have to be in at all, the more we can do that kind of integration versus keeping separate enemies is better, because if we huddle up in our little bubbles of people that we care about and say fuck you to everyone we don't know, then we'll just have a bunch of warring tribes. And I've been watching X-Men 97, and I love Professor Xavier's dream of having peaceful coexistence between mutants and humans in that case. So I'm more on that side.
Your coverage of Civil War touched on this as well, Jason. I listened to that yesterday. Very interesting.
Yeah, that was a great movie, I thought. I think, by the way, I was thinking about the X-Men. I think Negan's like Magneto. He just wants to dominate.
Interesting. He's not as hot as Michael Fassbender in that film, though.
Some people would argue
God,
that,
I just set feminism back 20 years. Sorry, everyone.
I'm keeping that in. All right. So, Lucy, you didn't really get a separate point. Do you want to do one?
Yeah, let me have a look. I think most of mine that's left is notes. The music in this episode was cool. I forget that in season 1 and 2 of The Walking Dead, they actually used kind of named tracks.
Yes.
I did also love, this is tangential to this, I'll come back to the music. It's something really off-putting in The Walking Dead when they mention something specific from pop culture. And in this episode, when Rick talks about his cousin listening to the audiobook of The Lord of the Rings, it really took me out of it for a moment.
I know.
I was like,
me too.
I was like,
You
oh,
shouldn't be
of
saying
course.
that name.
I was like, of course Lord of the Rings exists in this universe, but it just felt really like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Are there zombies in Lord of the Rings?
There
are orcs.
There's orcs.
There aren't any undead.
Yeah.
No, there's the army of ghosts.
There's an army of the dead. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Rick, you know about zombies, Rick.
Yeah. We found a hole in it.
Well, they're not really zombies. They're ghosts.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
They don't have bodies.
right?
I guess.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And then Aragorn like dingies them before the final battle, which seems really dumb. Anyway, spoilers for Lord of the Rings, everyone, in case you've not seen it. So when we first hear the music in Randall's ears, it's Lazy Bones with Wooden Shapes. SHJIPS. Then we also have a later track when we have Randall's headphones being taken out. It's Phase Wave by the Cave Singers. After that, the next bit of music that we hear is when Shane and Rick put Randall back in the car, and it's a band called Driver's Seat, and the song is called Sniffing the Tears. And the cool music for the ending of Shane looking out the window, kind of contemplative, is Civilian by White Oak. And they're all very cool.
For some reason, that one sticks out to
them.
me more. I feel like they might have used it more than once, or I don't know.
They used some good folky country gothic music in The Walking Dead really well in the first 4 seasons, and that's one that stuck out to me there. And along with that, the kind of artisticness of this episode, I think we're seeing it become more autumnal. Like the colours and saturation and what people are wearing are becoming more the sense that, to quote a show that I'm sure you've never heard of, winter is coming. And that it's interesting that the show is starting to really shift into that gear.
Yeah, it's a well done episode. Okay, I have one more. It's about the zombies. A lot of awesome zombie stuff, some cool firsts and questions that come up. I like the in medias res cold open with Shane and Rick on the run from them. And I thought it was another school because there's a school bus, but it says Merritt County Department of Public Works. Yeah. And the big mean one bearing down on Rick. And he looks like freaked out. That was very cool. And Shane is trapped in the bus, and I'm thinking, he's like, this is totally unnecessary, Rick. We could just kill Randall and not have to put ourselves in danger like this.
Yep.
And then out of the blue, Rick in the car says, we got to start using our knives more. And that really stood out to me, and that ammo is, we could save ammo and the knives would be quieter, because that might be the smartest thing Rick's ever said. It really changes the course of the whole series.
And the way he the power shift with that in this episode where he's walking Shane through doing
teaching
things
him
his way.
Let me show you.
Oh, it's so tense. It's really juicy. I love it.
How to be smart, Shane, and not just go nuts. And I was thinking, maybe this is on his mind because he's like, what could I have done better with Sophia?
Well, I love that part where Rick is talking about we got to use knives to conserve ammunition. We got to plan for the winter, blah, blah, blah. Because I know most people aren't interested so much in the logistics, but I'm totally a logistics junkie. I love it whenever there's planning about how do we make these things happen? How do we survive at the, at the level of logistics? And so I loved that part.
Have you read the comic?
I have.
Yeah, there's way more of that in there.
Yes, way more of it, yes.
And World War Z is another great book that has a lot of that kind of stuff.
When I started watching the show, I had not read the comic. I read the comic after I had seen maybe the first 4 seasons, and I was just stunned at how different the comic is from the show.
Yeah. So more zombie stuff. We get the first knifing of a Zed head through a fence, I believe, which we end up seeing so much more of.
And prison season.
It was interesting, yeah, especially then. Rick wipes the blood on the fence to draw the Zed over, and I don't think they use that anymore. They did it twice this episode. Shane does the same thing on the bus.
I love Shane's face when it works, and he's almost annoyed that Rick's way worked. He's like, ugh,
And the
okay.
zombie's licking it. It
But
does make sense that they would be attracted to it, but just from that far away, like, I don't even know. Rick could have been wrong. It might have had nothing to do with why the zombie came over. It might have just seen him, but I don't know.
Might have just
Yeah,
liked him.
exactly. It seemed to me to be unnecessary because as soon as the zombie sees or smells or whatever
Yeah.
it's going to come. So you don't really need to lure it.
I think they didn't want to have him make noise because the whole point was we can use knives that will make less noise and draw it, but he could have just went, psst.
Yeah,
hey.
exactly.
Hey.
He shoots 2 Zeds, Rick, that pile onto him and has to shoot the third by shooting one through the head, which was so cool. And it kind of reminded me of a scene from, no spoilers, but The Ones Who Live at the end there.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
The whole thing about you got to think the cold affects them. If it doesn't kill them, it's got to slow them down. That reminds me of a great issue of the comic early on, which they couldn't really do that way in the show because they're filming in Georgia in the summer and fall and it just didn't snow. It was hot, in fact. But they did end up doing some snow stuff way later in season 10. So they figured out a way to do it. And then Shane doesn't see any bites on I guess was it 2 cops, was it? And Rick, I mean, we know now that Rick knows that's because everyone turns, but he just says, gotta be scratches then. And I'm like, why is he keeping that? I guess he just doesn't want to bum everyone out or what?
That's one of my notes is the question, why is he keeping the fact that everybody's infected a secret?
Yeah, maybe he just morale.
I think he doesn't believe it yet. I think he wants to see evidence for himself.
Well, there's the evidence right there.
Yeah, could be. And
Ready,
Shane died
he's having
not
a
knowing.
day. There's a lot going on. He's
That
like,
is
oh,
true.
tell him later.
He's chosen
tell him
not
later.
to bring it up. Yeah, but yeah. And Shane died not knowing the truth about that. All right, so let's get into notes. Ready?
Well, like I said, one of my notes is, why is Rick going to such lengths to try to keep this a secret? We just talked about that. The other thing I had is just there's some really nice foreshadowing there in the line that you already mentioned, Jason, when Shane says, you can't just be the good guy anymore and expect to live. And Rick says, I'm not the good guy anymore. To save Carl's life, I would have done anything. And that just wraps around really nicely where this isn't a spoiler, but in The Ones Who Live, Rick talks about the worst thing that he ever did, which was something he did to save Carl. So here he's saying, I would do anything. And down the line, he does do anything. Right.
But it also brings up the point that Carl and Laurie are both gone. And you sort of wonder, well, God, how could anyone keep them safe? I don't remember the exact circumstances around Laurie in the prison. I know there was a prisoner letting zombies into areas, and I can't remember if Rick could have done something different to prevent that. And then Carl was just off with Sadiq.
Rick couldn't have saved Laurie once Herschel died because she had to have a cesarean, and she was not going to survive that without Herschel.
No matter what. Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I thought they made a point that she was off on her own, but maybe that.
Yeah,
didn't
no,
matter.
Herschel was still alive.
Was he?
Oh, yeah.
He had been. He was bedridden. He had.
Oh,
half
that's
a leg.
right.
Yeah,
that's
but
right.
He
But
wasn't.
I think
wasn't-
the point that they were
he wasn't
stuck.
with her.
Yeah,
He was
And
with
there was
Maggie
a-
because it's
the
Maggie
zombies came
who
in. Yeah. Had to do it.
does the cesarean to deliver Judith.
And I think there was always a thing over Laurie being pregnant that she'd had to have a C-section with Carl,
Right.
and the chances of her being able to deliver any other way were limited. So he's not the only reason she's dead.
I mean, I don't.
Correct.
Yeah, we'll have to be watching for that. But because I remember this one prisoner let zombies in. I forgot his name, and so it caused all this commotion, and that's why Laurie and Maggie and Carl were separate. But could Shane have done any better? Maybe he would have trained them more or something. I don't know. you just can't know. You can't answer that question. But the fact is that Rick didn't succeed in keeping them safe. Maybe he couldn't have done anything, but they're gone.
Yeah, so. They're gone now.
Yeah.
Anyway, you got anything else?
No, that was all my notes.
Lucy?
All right. I got a few. Shane tells a lie. He says he didn't look at Laurie before the apocalypse. He said last week that it had been a long time coming. So, yeah, that's not truthful. And I think that might be my only note. Oh, I thought it was interesting that Randall says one guy can't make it alone. And I wonder if that's in Shane's head. Also, one of the Zeds, the featured Zeds that is focused in on Rick when it comes out of the municipal building is actually one of the makeup artists from the show, which I thought was interesting. And there was a lot of good Hyundai product placement in this episode.
Yeah, I noticed the Hyundai looked a little smudged and a little dirty, and I can imagine like the AMC executives talking to the Hyundai rep, like, people just keep saying that the car's too shiny and it stands out, and they're like, okay, you can put a little bit of smudge on there.
It can have a little dirt on
just
the
some
left
dust.
wheel. Yeah. They really focus in on the speedometer, so you get a really good idea of like how shiny the dashboard is. I was like, oh, that's some good product placement. He's like, you're more than 18 miles on this very shiny speedometer that we have. Yeah.
I wonder how many Walking Dead fans got Hyundais because if you did, let me know.
One of my friends has that car, and he didn't.
Really?
I was like,
Dead?
He back in the day, yes, but he didn't twig. And I was like, you've got the car, and he was like, oh God, not the one that Shane and Andrea had sex in. And I'm like, yeah,
it's that exact car.
He like looked so depressed, and I was like, it's a good car.
He's like, I wonder where I got the idea for that.
Yeah.
So this episode was written by Scott Gimple and Glenn Mazzara, current and future showrunners. So if you like this episode, you have Gimple at least partly to thank. I heard he wrote all the parts with Laurie saying that women should be doing the laundry.
He did. He's like, I like to put all of my own beliefs into an episode. Actually, do you know, of all the things I've dragged Gimple for, portrayals of women isn't one of them. This is when all the listeners like, you dragged him for like 10 episodes of portrayals of women, and I'm like, did I? It's not something I associate with him as like a foible of like, oh, he writes women shittily. Right. But maybe he got feedback on this text and was like,
I mean, I don't want to go into this too much because we already talked about it, but do you think there's anything to what I'm saying about it? It is a good story point to have women like this who can be argued against or whatever.
Or should they just not even have it? If I could be assured that the perspective of the show was critiquing heteronormative patriarchy, but I don't see that in this first 2 seasons of the show.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, maybe not. I mean, I want to believe that it is, but when you're having Andrea be the most annoying character and she's the one taking the other side, then it's suspect. Yeah. But I can't believe anybody would think it was okay for Laurie to say that, though. So that's where I'm like, I think it is. But I don't know.
You'd hope not. Not.
All right. Maggie tells Laurie that Glenn isn't the same after they went to get Herschel, and he blames her for freezing up when there was danger. And Laurie says, tell him to man up and pull himself together. And I mean, given we're talking a lot about gender, that's an unfortunate turn of phrase, but I think there is something to that. Honestly, I think it is important to to be understanding when people are having emotional problems, but also like when you have tension and challenge, then just facing it and pushing through it, and you can grow and learn from it. Without that kind of a thing, you can't grow or learn. And so there is a part of me that's like, yeah, Glenn, pull yourself together.
Go back and do the laundry, Glenn. Jesus.
Driving Randall out there to drop him off reminds me of this horrible thing that happened when I was a kid. Maybe I shouldn't even mention it, but when I was a kid, I lived on it for a little while. I lived on a dairy, and we had all these stray cats that I would try to tame. And I was holding one, and I was 6 years old, holding one in my hand, and the screen door accidentally slammed on its tail, and it bit my nose, and it was hanging off my nose. And I started crying, and just so much blood was coming down, and my mom came out and saw that. And they ended up taking the cat and dropping it off somewhere. And now as an older person, I'm like, why did they do that? It was not the cat's fault. But
It got us scared, yeah.
Yeah. I'll probably edit that out. It's just a bad story for no reason.
What, in case the cat phones in? Like, Jason,
My mom will be
you
like,
left
"Why are you
me.
telling
It
that?"
was your fault.
And last, Beth mentioned she thinks the farm will be overrun, and she ends up being right. There's some foreshadowing for you.
Like,
Yes.
in about 3 days, she's right.
Yes.
She's like, Jason reminded me last week, I had been doing timeline checks and IMDb dives. My poor excuse for forgetting about this is that I lost my podcasting notebook in the move. It has since turned up, but I've started doing my notes digitally anyway. So I have returned with timeline and IMDb dive, which will cover the last 3 episodes, but will not take long because there's actually not that much time passes. So in the timeline, Nebraska and Triggerfinger both take place on the night of the 3rd of November into the early hours of the following day. So the 3rd of November is 72 days into the apocalypse. This blew my mind. Rick has only been awake for 13 days.
Oh my God.
Less than 2 weeks.
Wow.
Less
It's
than
already
2
killing
fucking
2
weeks.
guys.
Bloody hell. I was
You know,
like, holy moly.
I'm used to the shows, the spin-off shows and the end of the main show, being years and years and years into the apocalypse. So I had this funny reaction when Rick and Shane stopped at the crossroads. I said, that's brand new asphalt over there. How can they have brand new asphalt? And then I remembered, oh yeah, we're still very early in the apocalypse at this point.
He's not even been awake 2 weeks. 2
Wow.
weeks. And also, that does make me think, like, yeah, that baby's definitely not Rick's. Anyway, Triggerfinger happens during the daytime of the 4th of November, which is 73 days into the apocalypse. 18 miles out, we actually have a mini time jump. Rick talks about it having sat for a week. The official Walking Dead wiki, it's not the official, the Walking Dead wiki says that 9 days have passed, so we've made it to November 12th. We're 80 days into the apocalypse, so Rick will have been awake for 3 weeks. What a 3 weeks it has been.
And if it's supposed to be November, given the amount that they're sweating, I don't think they're going to have a cold winter.
Yeah, I know. I was like,
They don't.
November.
Yeah.
IMDb diving. I've really honed these into the ones that actually tell you something rather than the ones that are just
Thank
like,
you.
this episode we see Rick have 2 sides to his personality. And I'm like, great. Amazing. So in Nebraska, the bar scene was filmed at the old Sharpsburg auction building in Sharpsburg, Georgia. This is the first episode where Rick kills a living person, which I think we gathered. While in the bar describing how they came down from Philly, Dave says there was some kind of safe zone near DC, but they couldn't get close enough. This could be a reference to the Alexandria safe zone that the group gets to 3 seasons later.
Yeah.
He also mentions a train yard, which could be a reference to Terminus. There you go.
God, they took so much from that episode, potentially.
This, I think we spoke about this last week, Jason, but for Nebraska again, Rick kills 2 living humans. The first one dies with a headshot while the other one gets shot through the heart. People may ask why Rick shot the second guy again in the head. That's because at this point, Rick already knew they are all infected. For Triggerfinger...
but Glenn and Herschel, like, why'd you do that? God,
just wasting
you're
bullets,
psycho.
man. Just wasting. Herschel's like, am I drunk or did he just shoot that guy twice? Both. Triggerfinger, first time Herschel starts calling the undead walkers. I'm really annoyed that we didn't catch the second one. This is the first episode in which Daryl begins regularly wearing his iconic leather vest with wing patches on the back. He briefly wore it in the second season premiere, but takes it off before joining the search for Sophia, and it isn't seen again until this episode. It is now a series regular. So,
Cool.
This one was phrased weird. When Glenn shoots at the door, the handle turns moments before showing an A. So there must be an A visible somewhere in that episode.
Oh my God.
I need to go back and rewatch that.
That's because Gimple's involved.
Yeah. And for this episode, 18 Miles Out, director Ernest Dickerson said it was a struggle to prevent John Bernthal and Andrew Lincoln from doing their own stunts. I'll bet. During the scene where Shane breaks the window and releases all the zombies, the last zombie who walks out and looks at Rick is one of the makeup artists who also plays the zombie walking through the field. I wonder if that's Greg Nicotero, and this was before people knew who he was.
Oh, huh.
The fight scene took 4 days to shoot. And this final one's a bit comic book spoilery, but I think we're probably past that now. But
right,
skip 30 seconds if you don't want to hear it. When Beth proposes to Maggie that they commit mutual suicide, and the commit is a quote from IMDb, this is actually a nod to the graphic novel. Tyrese is originally introduced between the quarry camp and the Greens farm. Tyrese has a daughter, not a sister, and her boyfriend in tow. It is revealed that the two teens have a suicide pact which they eventually commit in prison. Tyrese's daughter dies, the boyfriend does not. When Tyrese finds the boy alive, he strangles him. When the boy turns, that is how the graphic novel realises that everyone is infected and turns unless a head wound is involved. So a bit of comic.
So you can see how
here.
cheery the comic is.
Yeah. And that is not the most depressing thing that happens in the comic. That's like fairly light compared to some other stuff.
Yeah. And there's one issue in particular that's worse than anything anywhere else on the show.
Brutal.
Even worse than the fucking Grace episode in Fear the Walking Dead.
Yeah.
That's it?
That's it.
So, only on The Walking Dead? Only on The Walking Dead would someone tricking someone into letting her keep watch over her suicidal sister and then leaving her alone. And then that person almost but not quite killing herself. And another guy almost but not quite killing the leader of the group. All be considered just a little drama flare up in the group where they're all like, that actually turned out fine, right? We're fine.
Only on The Walking Dead would your high school yearbook be your death sentence.
I don't accept that. I think there are many instances where your high school yearbook might be your death sentence.
Keep those things hidden, everyone.
Obvious threat to untold numbers of citizens.
The people it kills get up and kill.
Are they slow-moving, Chief?
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
This is a Walking Dead Cast news update.
Just a couple of quick things. This one is great. For everyone in the UK, British broadcaster Sky announced that all 11 seasons of The Walking Dead and The Walking Dead Dead City, The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, and The Ones Who Live are going to be released exclusively on Sky and the streaming service Now. So all 177 episodes of the original series are going to be on Sky and Now starting May 19th. So that's coming up quick. Might already be past, depending on when you're listening to this. And The Ones Who Live will be May 31st. And then Dead City and Daryl Dixon will come later this year sometime. So for some reason, they're doing The Ones Who Live first and Dead City, Daryl Dixon later. It didn't say anything about fear.
Oh,
maybe they're
bummer.
like, nah, that's all right. We don't need that. So that's cool. Like, I know a lot of people couldn't watch it or had to go off and find it somewhere else. So it's going to be available officially.
Excellent.
And then the only other thing is that The Last of Us Season 2 has been filming for a little while, and there's images starting to come out with Ellie and Joel and some of the other characters. Dina, who, if you played the second game, you know she's a big character. So it's exciting, and I think it's scheduled to come out early next year to premiere.
Sooner than expected, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yay.
good. Yay. All right, let's move on to listener moans, groans, and grunts. Rennie, you want to go first?
Yes. Michael Kostka says, Andrea is the worst. Michael put a lot of O's in worst.
Amazing. Heather Martin says, did you pass out on Rick again? I think, is that referring to the zombies passing out on him?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Love it.
Penny Lennox says, this episode really stands out in my memory for having some of the best and most stressful zombie action. Also, at this point in the second half of the season 2, I wasn't completely tired of the Randall storyline yet, so I was still able to care whether or not he lived or died. And the Shane versus Rick tension was fantastic and still pretty fresh. Yeah, it was. I didn't really stress enough that I thought that fight was so thrilling and awful at the same time.
Yes. Dre Manoni says, Shane showed his true colors to Rick this episode, and Rick continued to turn the other cheek. So much of what comes next is because Rick doesn't want to believe Shane. But denial only takes him so far. But that's a different episode. Really loved this one since we got more Zeds and some close calls. Lots of tension that moves the story along for Rick and Shane's dynamic.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, Rick's really just sort of in denial.
Our friend Karen Shee says, didn't have the chance to rewatch the episode, but just wanted to say that I'm excited to hear Archmaester Rennie's thoughts. I loved the Zed-Head show Jason did with Rennie about their favourite sci-fi books. Thanks for the coverage, everyone. P.S. Oh yeah, this is the episode where the men fight with their fists and the women fight with their tongues. Tension everywhere. And don't kill yourself. Also, don't kill yourself, Doodlebug. Context matters, and the finality of suicide made it too great a risk for Beth to simply test her mettle.
The men also fight with their tongues, so I think the women should have also fought with their fists. That would have been great.
Thank you for the nice words, Karen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's nice.
Yeah.
Love Karen. Billy Thompson says, hello. Such a classic episode this week. That first conversation between Rick and Shane really amplifies what you guys said last week about Shane still being a little boy. He doesn't know where to look. It's like a child being told off, but such good acting from Bernthal. The Walkers seem to have a lot more character in the earlier seasons because everything is less decayed than the later seasons, which is refreshing to see during the rewatch. I agree. I think the Walkers are better looking than I remembered them. I feel like over time, maybe the makeup people got tired. There would always be some really great hero ones, but I think even on Fear, it just looked like they had masks on sometimes. Anyway, Billy goes on, another episode, another character I'm done with. God, I can't stand Andrea, but I've got to love Randall's enthusiasm driving the infamous Hyundai with a tape around his neck and half a leg. I think Randall would have been fine if he were to join the group. Thanks, guys.
Carly Jackson says, I kept meaning to post a defense of Lori in the last episode, but didn't get to it. I just want to point out that Shane assaulted her at the CDC, so I can empathize with her acting out of fear instead of using her head the last 2 episodes. Also, that conversation with Rick is brilliant. She's trying to communicate her fear of Shane, and Rick just isn't getting it until the end. Yeah, good point, Carly. Then in this episode, Lori really is terrible. She gives terrible non-advice to Maggie and then gets defensive when Andrea points out how much she still has. Andrea is also terrible in this episode. I love the zombies in this episode, but I wish the story was moving along more quickly.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about next episode because we get a juicy philosophical discussion.
It is slow as hell this season, I gotta say.
It is. You know, I went back and just looked at the comic because I didn't remember Randall being a character in the comic, but I wasn't sure. So I went back and, you know, this whole season, which goes on and on, is about like 3 pages in the comics. So.
Yeah. They're just constant arguing about the same things over and over again, and escalates.
Right. Danielle Dement Yost says, I love the conversation Rick has with Shane in the road, some truths being told, except Shane saying he didn't look at Laurie before the world fell. He implied otherwise to Laurie last episode when he said their affair was a long time coming. Rick really stepped up as a leader with Shane in this episode. I loved him teaching Shane how to pin walkers against the chain link fence and stab them in the head. The undercurrent of helpless women and big strong men in this episode is just cringy. Laurie talking about how Andrea isn't needed to help protect Camp, and later Beth talking to Maggie about how she, Maggie and Patricia have only Herschel and Jimmy to keep them safe. Good point, Danielle. The action in this episode is great, and I remember really thinking Shane was going to leave Shane behind in that bus. Kind of wish he had. Rick was always too good for Shane.
You said Shane was going to leave Shane behind, but it was Rick was going to leave Shane behind.
Rick was going. Shane left himself behind on the bus. Sorry, Danielle.
So
Rick was going to leave Shane behind on the bus.
Great, Danielle. Andy Fisher says, Dear JNL, oi. 18 Miles Out is not an episode that I enjoyed rewatching, even with the terrific zombie skirmishes. The Let's Save Randall storyline is a little silly, as is Rick putting up with Shane's bullshit and treachery over and over. However, I enjoyed how Rick's mind changed over the course of the show. Here in the second season, he did almost everything he could to save Randall, but as the show went on, Rick and other characters became much less forgiving of outsiders and threats. And after being betrayed at Terminus, the debate was over. Fresh out of sweet forgiveness. Forgiveness is a theme that continues throughout the show. In the final episode of The Savior's War, Rick makes the decision not to kill Negan. Was this forgiveness, revenge, military strategy? Only on The Walking Dead. I'll get to that, but I mean, I think that was about trying to start a civilization and to be civilized, so to imprison him rather than kill him. But I also, if I remember right, I think it was a response to Carl's letter to Rick saying that we need to bring these people in. And it really, I think that time period was when Rick started to come back from being so dark and reactive all the time. But he goes on, only on The Walking Dead would you ride home and make nice in the car of a man that just tried to murder you over and over. Thank you for the wonderful podcast. Thanks,
and
Amy.
be so happy about it. He was really pleased.
Rachel Teal Edwards says, every time I see an open field bordered by trees, I imagine a walker in the field ambling towards the road, and I think of this episode. In case you wondered how pervasive this show is in my consciousness. This is such a good episode. I think both storylines are equally as enthralling, and the contrast between them is so jarring. I think Beth wanting to end her life after a seriously traumatic event in which she was suddenly made aware that the world has ended and only absolute horror remains is a totally understandable response. Asking your sister to do it with you? Not so reasonable. And not a single woman responded reasonably either. After thinking about the way the women are written in this episode, I actually went online to find out if Gimple is divorced. Parentheses. He's
so
not.
Oh.
Lori, Andrea, and Maggie all had fair points, and if they'd talked it out before emotionally reacting and projecting all of their own shit onto Beth, they might have come up with a decent way to handle the situation. Andrea, yes, if Beth wants to do it badly enough, she'll find a way. That doesn't mean you give her a knife and tell her to have at it. Aside from that absurdity, Andrea actually has the most reasonable response. Beth does have to figure out for herself that life is worth living. You can't babysit her until she changes her mind, Lori. And believe it or not, Maggie, yelling at and belittling her isn't going to help either. Andrea should have stuck with the making room for the pain concept and maybe took some more time to empathize with Beth and share her own story instead of just walking away. Wow, what a good idea that is, too,
Yes.
to have Andrea actually talk with Beth about her own feelings. Yeah. Basically, everyone fucked up, and luckily, when Beth attempted, she realized she was fucking up, too. On a positive note, I appreciate the depth of character this story started to create for Beth, who ends up being so strong and capable.
Yeah. This show has a lot of fuck ups.
Yeah.
That reminded me, I forgot to say about Beth when she, decided not to kill herself. And I was thinking about what happened to the rest of her life. Did she end up doing anything that would be worth living on for at least a little while in her, probably, the way she felt about it. And so I, looked up what happened with the rest of her character, a couple of moments, like when she sings beautifully at the prison to boost morale. She helped Herschel with his recovery after he lost his leg. She helped take care of baby Judith. She had a boyfriend for a while, Zach from Woodbury, who moved into the prison. She became good friends with Daryl and bonded with him and probably had a crush on him. I'm not sure. So there's all that stuff. Then she got kidnapped and had a horrible time there and then ended up dying in such a stupid way with this accidental shooting.
I was thinking about this. She must be dead within a year of this episode.
Yeah.
If not long after.
Yeah.
Well, when we get there, you'll tell us on the timeline, Lucy.
I will.
That's right.
I'll be tuning in. I'll be like, hey, ironically, Beth lived for like, no, after this date. Yeah.
One more thing you reminded me of, Rachel, too, is Andrea's arguing we got to let her make that decision. And there is still just a part of me that's like, Andrea, if it wasn't for Dale, you would be dead. I can't help but have that thought. Like, maybe there's at least a little part of you that should be thankful that you've had because now you're choosing life and you wouldn't have had the opportunity to choose that. I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but that's what comes out of me. And so to just sort of make it really easy for Beth to go ahead and do it right at this moment of trauma after she had her own reprieve and got to live her life. I feel so critical of her.
But it's funny when you think about the timeline. Andrea, the CDC is a week ago. Like it's nuts that Andrea is as together as she is in this episode. Actually, when you think about it, it's like bloody hell. Amy's not even been dead a fortnight.
That's a good point. Yeah, maybe that means we should give Andrea a little more grace too, given what she's been through.
Maybe now that you've said that, I hate it. Forget I said anything. Nah, she's a dickhead.
That's funny. Okay, we got a call from Steve Brown.
Yay.
Hello, Jason and Lucy. This is Steve, and we now return you to your hopefully regularly scheduled live Steves. This one's for 18 miles out. Is this Walker chasing Rick in a Freddy Krueger sweater? Krueger? No, it's a button up. To me, we're still in the kind of that phase of where they're not exactly great at killing walkers yet. So I can understand them getting into this predicament, but I don't remember it. I had to pause it because Rick just called it my baby. So I don't believe Shane for a minute. He was just waiting for his chance to get to Lori. I was so stupid I missed the mic drop moment when Shane said 18 miles out. Seemed like little knives to be crushed into people's skulls. Oh, you done just messed up. You said you went to school with Maggie, so he already knows where the farm is. I think it's interesting that they didn't even acknowledge the fact that I think those two walkers they killed were police officers, right? That scene of the walkers coming out of the building different from the cold open because it seemed different and like Randall was still crawling towards the knife in the cold open, but yet he had the knife in this. Did they reshoot that whole scene? And we're back to Lori being just totally the feminist, right? Oh, the woman should do the laundry and clean. Let the men protect us. You don't need the men to protect you. And of course, Andrew's not completely right either. So, I mean, there's two sides to everything, right? Ooh, that was a cool effect, though, that sticking the gun in the walker's mouth and then shooting the other walkers through his head. Ugh. Wow, I forgot how fractured they all were before they grew as a family together. And this scene with Emily, Kenny, and Lauren going, oh, so good. Oh, and Rick comes riding out of nowhere like Clint Eastwood coming back to save a friend. Well, we'll see how long this peace between Rick and Shane lasts. I don't remember. And we're on to next week.
I think it doesn't last at all.
Yeah, I think it's... Yeah, no.
It's pretty much over right now. All right, that is our show, episode 581. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. As always, thank you, Rennie, for coming on. I'm so glad you wanted to come on.
Good.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Next episode is The Walking Dead Season 2, Episode 11, Judge, Jury, Executioner.
If you want to write in or leave us a voice message about it, you can find all our contact details at... You can find all our contact information at podcastica.com.
Details is fine.
No, it's wrong. It's wrong.
And while you're there, please check out our other podcasts like Go Back.